How many times have you been forced to deal with toxic people? And have you ever wondered which people you should keep away from your life to preserve your inner peace and emotional balance? There are individuals who can negatively influence your mind and spirit, hindering your path to happiness and personal fulfillment. In this video, thanks to a Zen story full of wisdom, we will see 10 types of people you should never help. 10 types of people you should keep out of your life. So stay until the end because you will discover a valuable guide that will allow you to safeguard your mental well-being. But before continuing, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to stay updated when we publish new content for your spiritual growth. In a remote Buddhist monastery nestled among the Japanese mountains, the wise Buddhist monk Masaki met with his disciples to talk about the 10 types of people to keep away from our lives, according to the teachings of the Buddha. The individuals we will talk about, said the monk, can act as poison to our mind and spirit, hindering our path to enlightenment. For this reason, it is important that they remain out of our lives. The disciples, knowing the monk's extreme wisdom, remained silent and prepared to listen carefully to his precious words. The first kind of person to stay away from, Masaki said, is the dishonest. Once upon a time, the monk began, a merchant named Hiro came to the village, known to all for his skill in bartering and negotiation. However, behind his affable smile was a negative nature. Hiro, in fact, used to deceive his customers with defective merchandise and false promises. First, he won them over with his oratory skills, then he sold them inferior and defective products. One day, Masaki continued, an honest farmer bought an ox from Hiro to plow the fields. But when the animal turned out to be sick and weak, the farmer realized he had been deceived. Discovering the truth, the farmer decided to take justice into his own hands and attacked Hiro. The dishonesty of the latter, in essence, had brought ruin to both of them. The disciples nodded in understanding, recognizing the importance of truth and integrity in human relationships. Dishonesty, Masaki concluded, not only corrupts the hearts of those who practice it, but also undermines the foundations of trust and mutual respect. Avoiding contact with dishonest individuals is essential to preserving our integrity and spiritual well-being. Masaki, scrutinizing his disciples, moved on to the second type of person to avoid, the smart one. And to make his words better understood, he also concentrated in this case on a tangible example, that of a smart politician. Imagine, Masaki began solemnly, a politician named Akira, known for his eloquence and his ability to convince the masses. Akira had a reputation for loyalty to the community, but behind his facade of altruism lay a boundless ambition and a lack of moral integrity. He used his rhetorical skills to manipulate public opinion and to obtain consensus on projects that would bring personal benefits, ignoring the real needs of the community. Masaki paused, allowing his disciples to reflect on the example of the crafty politician. Then he continued, one day, Akira proposed an economic development plan that would involve the exploitation of precious natural resources, completely ignoring the devastating environmental impacts. Despite being aware of the consequences, Akira pursued his plan for his own personal gain to the detriment of the common good. The disciples listened with growing disquiet, recognizing the danger of political deception for the public good. The crafty politician, Masaki concluded firmly, may appear to be a charismatic and determined leader, but his lack of scruples and his selfish pursuit of power make him a threat to the stability and balance of society. Avoiding involvement with manipulative individuals in the world of politics, he continued, is essential to preserving justice and fairness in our community. The third type of person to keep out of your life is the short-tempered, Masaki said with a stern look. Imagine, Masaki began, a warrior feared throughout the kingdom for his strength and skill in combat. However, behind his mask of power and prestige, there was a soul troubled by anger. And uncontrolled anger can create serious consequences for both those who feel it and those who receive it. This warrior, the monk continued, was known for his violent and unpredictable outbursts of anger, which often led to dire consequences for those around him. One day, during a border dispute, the warrior, blinded by his fury, launched a hasty attack that led to the death of many innocent people. Although his martial skills were acclaimed, his lack of control over his anger led to his downfall and loss of respect from his own people. The quick-tempered one, Masaki concluded firmly, may seem powerful and intimidating, but his inability to control his fury makes him a threat to the peace and harmony of the community. Masaki, happy to see his disciples very interested in the topic, went on to talk about the fourth type of person to avoid, the coward. And with a calm and reassuring voice, he began to weave a new story dedicated to those who hide behind their fears rather than face them. Many years ago, here in the village, there was a young farmer named Kenji, began the monk. Despite having great intelligence and extensive knowledge of his work, Kenji lacked self-confidence and was obsessed with the fear of failure. The young farmer, Masaki continued, systematically avoided the challenges and opportunities that presented themselves to him, preferring to stay in his comfort zone rather than risk failure. The fear he felt when faced with anything new paralyzed him, preventing him from growing and progressing in life. One day, Masaki continued, a great opportunity presented itself to Kenji, fertile, unexplored land that could transform his modest farm into a prosperous plot of land. However, rather than face the challenge with courage, Kenji retreated in his fear, giving up the opportunity to realize his dreams and provide his children with a fulfilling, poverty-free life. The coward, Masaki concluded, may appear prudent and cautious, but his lack of courage deprives him of many opportunities for growth and fulfillment. And avoiding associating with people dominated by fear allows us to better pursue our goals. The greedy is another type of person that Masaki focused on. Greed, he said wisely, is like a bottomless pit that devours true happiness. Attachment to material goods beyond measure distances us from inner peace and authentic joy. Masaki went on to talk about greed and how it was important to stay away from greedy individuals. Once upon a time, there was a rich merchant named Ryo, he said, whose sole purpose in life was to accumulate wealth. Despite already owning many possessions, Ryo was never satisfied and kept wanting more and more. Ultimately, his attachment to money led to his downfall as he lost everything he had, including his own inner peace. Masaki, with penetrating eyes and a firm voice, turned to his disciples, urging them to reflect on the sixth type of person to avoid, the dishonorable. Imagine, Masaki began, a nobleman named Noboru, respected and honored within his community. However, behind his mask of respectability, Noboru hid a dark side to his personality. Noboru, Masaki continued, was known for his dishonorable and despicable actions, which brought discredit upon himself and his family. He ignored the moral norms and laws of society, acting only on his selfish desires. Masaki paused briefly, allowing his disciples to reflect on the importance of respect and integrity. One day, he continued, Noboru betrayed the trust of those around him by acting cowardly and treacherously to get what he wanted. His actions brought dishonor and shame to his family and community, breaking bonds of trust and respect that had lasted decades. The dishonorable, Masaki concluded firmly, may appear powerful and influential, but his lack of moral integrity makes him a threat to the stability and honor of the community. The monk, at this point, turned to his disciples to explore the seventh type of person to avoid, the ignorant. And he spoke about the danger of the lack of knowledge and awareness that characterized this type of individual. I knew an individual who, despite having a kind heart, had not had the opportunity to learn and grow intellectually. Haruki, this is his name, lived in his ignorance, unable to understand the complexity of the world around him. Slowly, his choices based on ignorance led him to suffer loss and suffering, as he was easily manipulated by unscrupulous individuals who took advantage of his naivety. The ignorant may seem harmless, but their lack of awareness makes them vulnerable and susceptible to influence. Therefore, it is essential to keep the ignorant out of our lives, to preserve our mental and spiritual integrity. Masaki, with penetrating eyes and a firm voice, turned to his disciples to introduce the eighth type of person to avoid, the envious. Envy, he said wisely, is like a worm that gnaws at the soul, feeding on the happiness of others rather than cultivating its own. The envious person focuses on what he lacks, poisoning his existence with resentment and bitterness. Masaki told the story of a craftsman named Isamu, known for his skill in pottery. Isamu was envious of the success of another craftsman, Hiroshi, whose works were highly regarded. Instead of focusing on improving his work, Isamu spent his energy criticizing and belittling Hiroshi, ending up isolating himself and losing the joy of creation. In a calm and reassuring voice, the monk went on to describe the ninth type of person to avoid, the pessimist. The pessimist, he said, sees only darkness, even when the sun shines brightly. His negative outlook on life not only makes him unhappy, but can also infect those around him, extinguishing hope and joy. Masaki told the story of a young woman named Hana, who was always worried and anxious about the future. Despite having a comfortable life and a loving family, Hana was obsessed with possible misfortunes and catastrophes, ending up living in fear and unhappiness. Continuing his lesson, Masaki spoke about the manipulator. The manipulator, he said sternly, is like a puppeteer who pulls the strings of other people's emotions for his own purposes. He uses deception, blame, and flattery to control and exploit others, leaving a trail of pain and confusion in his wake. Masaki told the story of a man named Takeshi, who used his charm and intelligence to manipulate people to his advantage. Takeshi pretended to be a friend and confidant, but in reality he was just trying to get what he wanted without caring about the feelings or needs of others. Always remember, Masaki concluded in a calm voice that the journey to inner peace and spiritual fulfillment requires not only the pursuit of wisdom, but also an awareness of the dangers that surround us. Avoiding contact with individuals like those we have talked about allows us to protect ourselves, our mental balance, and our spiritual and personal growth.